Since 2016, we've had nothing but a successful stream of retro-style shooters flooding the indie market, from the likes of Devil Daggers, Dusk, Ultra Kill, Wrath Aeon of Ruin, Amid Evil, and so on. But we are now reaching a stage where the market is starting to become too identical here. A lot of the ones I've played seem to have similar settings, gameplay, weapon arsenals, and so on, where it feels like we've pretty much played this before. Of course though, like all genres, there are always exceptions within the cracks that stand out a lot more. Take HROT for example. The setting is more unorthodox compared to your typical hellscape or town taken over by malicious forces. HROT is one game out of a few that I'm excited to see continue its development, as is another one that I am delving more into today. A game that I found to be not only quite enjoyable but also somewhat refreshing at the same time. I bring you Incision. Incision is a retro-styled shooter, or as the term is nowadays, boomer shooter, developed by Smooth Brain Dev and published by Hyperstrange, set in an industrial sci-fi setting that also happens to incorporate body horror into the mix. If you've come off the likes of Quake or other shooters similar to it, then you'll already have a pretty good idea what you're in for. As of last September in 22, the game had been released into early access, and for the time being, there is only one episode available. But prior to that there was a demo, and at the time when I had first played it, I found it to be quite enjoyable. And seeing that it was on sale, I decided to give the current build a try, and to see how the rest of the game holds up. The setting is in a world that appears to have been taken over by some unknown parasitic entity that has transformed the place into a mass of flesh and machine binded together, creating a gory regime full of nightmarish creations and opposing forces that are pitted against you. Your character seeks to put an end to it all by cutting your way through the Redfield labyrinth of industrial geometry and unholy biology. And you do it all in the guise of a boomer shooter, with an arsenal of weapons and early 3D graphics to boot. Out of most of the boomer shooters that I have tried over the years, their settings have been palatable for the most part while not doing a great deal for me, save for a few exceptions like Dusk and Ultra Kill and HROT. Incision is a game with an amazing amount of potential to fully realize its industrial sci-fi body horror amalgamation, since it is honestly quite refreshing in my opinion. The integration of the body horror elements that combine with the industrial base levels give off an oppressing and strong atmosphere that is layered throughout the game. And when you finally dig deeper towards the end of the episode, the setting itself becomes even more stranger, adding in a religious tone towards the whole ordeal. What the next few episodes may hold is uncertain, but I can only imagine that the game will become more and more cosmic horror-like as it completes its story, which is what I'm assuming, but I may also be wrong here. Either way, I'm really excited. The story itself is something that's not fully explained, and it is very easy to miss. Towards the end of the game, I didn't realize that you could interact with these points of interest, which provides background text to what is going on. Now I understand that the game's story is still being developed alongside the episodes, but it would be great to see a lore menu be implemented for those that want to understand the game's universe more. The recent Doom entries did this and it did wonders for both of those games. So far though, it's off to a pretty good start, with the setting being interesting enough to make you want more, which in itself is pretty hard to pull off when you're contending with a lot of other boomer shooters that are pretty similar. Gameplay wise, it doesn't really do anything to spice up what's already been established. It's fast paced, has you going from different rooms, activating panels or lever switches, killing lots of bad guys, etc. Like I said, if you've come off of Quake or other shooters that are like it, then Incision is pretty much the same in this regard. But that's not to say that's entirely a bad thing, because the gameplay loop is still pretty fun. The weapons have a nice feel to them, and their designs are pretty neat. You have the Saw Spear, your starting weapon in the game. You can use it to do long range attacks, or use it like a chainsaw. You can also obtain a power-up that powers it up, but most of the time it's too risky to solely rely on this weapon because of the amount of enemies you usually deal with. You also use it to destroy these objects that let you progress through the level, and to end the level once you reach the end. The Magnum is your standard handgun, but is also quite powerful when you hold the right mouse button. You do this cool animation that then flashes the pistol, and if you shoot it at this moment, it does critical damage, one-shotting some of the enemies in this game. The shotgun is standard fare. It does nothing more than what you'd expect it to. You get ammo for it often, and you'll be using it most of the time. It's still a pretty fun weapon to use though. The machine gun is pretty weak, but does have a useful secondary mode that turns it into a grenade launcher. Then there's the rocket launcher, which is pretty decent, and lets you fire multiple rockets. Then there's the minigun. You can hold the right mouse button to rotate it quickly and fire away. Does a pretty good amount of damage, but for some reason though the ammo is counted as yards. I don't know why, but it's still a pretty good weapon. But one weapon though that is the most unique out of the bunch is this weapon here. It's called Kitty. It gives the enemies, and in order to continue using it, you absorb blood, which you get soon after killing the enemies. It comes in handy in a few hairy scenarios, but most of the time I've relied more on the other weapons like the Magnum, the shotgun, or the rocket launcher to get me by. The enemy designs are pretty neat here, with even some of them being inspired by Quake, like this particular one here. You have a combination of foot soldiers, running dudes with teeth, these weird guys, big dudes throwing saws, bipedal creatures that throw shit, these fuckers that shoot rockets, and these other fuckers that shoot homing rockets. You also have boss fights, but two of them are the exact same, and the final boss is something else entirely. The enemies themselves are challenging, but like most of these games, you kill them quickly before they do the same, and if you're not moving around constantly, you'll get overwhelmed and die. Challenge-wise, the game is pretty manageable, even on the hardest difficulty. The boss fights though can be a bit annoying with their random projectiles, but it's nothing hair-pulling or nail-biting. However, there is the damage and projectile modifiers to think about. If you think the game isn't hard enough, you can max it out to 200%, making the game not so much a cakewalk anymore. You also have enemy and item randomizers, adding some level of replayability to the levels themselves. Like any other Quake or Doom-inspired shooter, you have secrets and enemies to kill. You don't have to collect keys or any of that crap, but you progress by pressing buttons, pulling levers, or destroying these things here in order to get to the end. There are about 8 levels in one episode, 2 of them being boss fights, but they're all pretty sizable and have a good amount of playtime added to them. It took just over 2 hours for me to beat the whole episode, meaning that it won't take very long to beat altogether, especially if you're going through it once more. The main incentive for the moment to keep playing it is either by playing it on a higher difficulty or adding randomizer modes to replay it. But with more episodes to come, the game will be longer naturally speaking. For now though, this is all we have. Also, there's no quick saving or saving in general here to do. If you die, you start the level all over again. The only reprieve you have in case you fuck up are the extra lives you obtain. The first time around I've lost lives, but haven't died where I had to start the whole level from scratch. On the higher difficulties though, you'll need to bring your A game. Don't worry though, the game autosaves so that if you need to take a break, you can start at the level you're up to. The graphics are based on early 3D FPS shooters, which also makes most of the boomer shooters in the market, adopting a PS1 style approach to the textures and the visuals. Personally, I don't mind them, but it's not exactly something I hope for when it comes to new and upcoming retro-inspired shooters. To be honest with you, I would prefer better visuals, even PS2-inspired visuals at the very least. For me, when I think of retro gaming, I think more of the gameplay and the design philosophy behind them, not so much the graphics, which was something I got used to growing up, but wasn't necessarily something I wanted to keep seeing, since nowadays we're above and beyond this sort of stuff, especially when you have games like this, being made by either one person or a small team of people making something that plays and looks amazing at the same time. Either way though, I don't mind the graphics here anyway, since it suits the atmosphere and the setting of Incision quite well. So far, Incision is a pretty good retro-inspired shooter. While it's nothing groundbreaking, it does have a refreshing setting that has potential to become even more interesting. The gameplay is fun and the weapons are nice to handle, but for the foreseeable future, the later episodes are still yet to be done. So for now, there's only one episode. I will definitely revisit this game again when the second episode drops and see what it offers to the table. I look forward to seeing where this game goes and wish the developer good luck on this project. Thank you for watching.